My name is Malcolm Lloyd. I'm the 2024 Equal Justice Works Fellow, supported by the funds raised from last year's Scales of Justice event. I'm very humbled to be on the stage with you all tonight. I'd like to begin by acknowledging all the current fellows, the alumni who paved the way for us, and all of those who chose to be here tonight to help expand legal services for marginalized communities across our country. I'm very conscious of some of the personal struggles some may have with the topics I'll discuss with you tonight. I do not share these stories lightly, but tell them in an effort to build collective understanding so that we ensure these injustices stop. Tonight, I'd like to share with you a piece of a young man's story, which I came to know through my work. I've changed his name to protect his identity. Tonight, I'd like to tell you why this fellowship means so much to me. Louisiana, where I work, thanks to Equal Justice Works, is notorious for incarcerating more people per capita than any other state or country in the world. Nearly 80% of all youth incarcerated in the state are black. This makes black children 4 times more likely than their white peers to be incarcerated. My own story begins at 12, when I lost my father to cancer, began acting out in school. I watched my mother struggle to keep the family together and a roof over my sister and I's heads. The second and third chances I received insulated me from the true cost of my mistakes, which cannot be said of the young men I soon meet and work with. However, as I grew up, I began mentoring at-risk children. This became a through line in my life that led me to Louisiana to teach at a struggling charter school in New Orleans. It was there I regularly saw students traumatized by gun violence, brutalized by police, and denied an equal education to their white peers. Witnessing this mistreatment led me to become a juvenile defense investigator at the Orleans Public Defender's Office, where I worked for 5 years representing hundreds of children charged with juvenile, felony, and life without parole offenses. What I witnessed there led me to law school and to become a civil rights attorney. As law school ended, I received a phone call informing me that I'd been awarded the Equal Justice Works Fellowship with the ACLU of Louisiana. And that very next day, I drove with my law school's legal clinic up the Mississippi River to Dixon Correctional Institute, a medium security prison. We were to give an all-day legal training to a group of incarcerated legal advocates. They represent other incarcerated men with disciplinary matters and post-conviction relief claims. When I arrived at Dixon, I walked through a rusty metal detector. Prison guards patted me down, escorting me along a concrete walkway to a modest prison chapel to give this training. As the barbed wire enclosed me into the prison, I heard someone say, "Mr. Malcolm." I saw a young man dressed in denim with a thin beard along his jawline. He looked at me and smiled. It was Jonathan, one of my closest and longtime clients. It had been 6 years. I looked at him in utter disbelief, and he back at me. I said, "Jonathan." We looked at each other and embraced. At 25 years old, Jonathan was the youngest legal advocate joining us in this training, a remarkable achievement for a young man his age. He was selected for his maturity and his intelligence, and this position is typically reserved for men twice his age with decades of legal experience. While he was always an avid reader, I learned that he was now an amateur boxer and a practicing Muslim. I first met Jonathan at 15, handcuffed and scared after New Orleans police had beaten and arrested him. He was not yet 5 feet, barely weighed 80 pounds, having completed only 8th grade. As a child, while his father served life in prison, he and his mother endured 14 evictions, eventually sheltering in a dilapidated row house, surveilled by police 24 hours a day. Shortly after his arrest, the state indicted him for first-degree murder, where he faced life in prison without the benefit of parole. If convicted, he'd die at the Louisiana State Penitentiary, the 18,000-acre plantation prison known as Angola, where he too would work the farm line like the enslaved people who worked the rows of sugarcane fields there. Despite these obstacles, over the next 4 years, Jonathan grew into manhood, overcoming all odds, where he earned his high school diploma and became a mentor to other incarcerated young men. While our bond was unique, his 4 years of pretrial incarceration were not. During this time, Jonathan attempted suicide. swallowing pills he'd stashed one night alone in his cell. Almost all the teenagers I represented during this time, who similarly were charged as adults and faced the same prospect of serving decades upstate in prison, suffered in this way. Children serving time in adult jails and facilities are 36 times more likely to commit suicide than children in juvenile detention centers. Jonathan was no exception. Instead of treating his trauma, white doctors prescribed him powerful anti-psychotropic medication to control and incapacitate him. The morning after his attempt, without telling his family, the jail shipped him up to a crumbling mental institution in northern Louisiana to get rid of their problem. Instead of protecting him, he was misdiagnosed, mistreated, and experimented on because he was black and because he was poor. I spent the next 4 years investigating his case before he pled to 15 years in prison, the best of a worst-case scenario. The last time I saw him was on the morning he was shipped upstate. As we sat across from one another in the jail's legal visitation booth, a dirty plexiglass window divided and prevented us from embracing. That was over 6 years ago. Jonathan and I would spend the rest of this day in this legal training catching up one another on our lives. When the training concluded, we walked back down the concrete path along the barbed wire to the old security gate. This time, there was no plexiglass to divide us. We embraced and said goodbye once again. I drove home down the Mississippi River, accepting the Equal Justice Works Fellowship that night. I've shared with you Jonathan's story because it's a story of real struggle within a series of systemic failures. 1 in 4 children in Louisiana lives in food insecurity and poverty, the highest in the nation. They face a segregated and inequitable school system, racist policing, and mass incarceration. This fellowship is an important and impactful way to address the systemic injustices imposed upon children like Jonathan. It enables me to confront the school-to-prison pipeline by bringing civil rights cases on behalf of children like Jonathan, brutalized by police, school resource officers, and prison guards across all of Louisiana. Your support enables me to advance progressive, trauma-centered legislation to expand services and protections for low-income children and families. And your support enables me to design and build the first of its kind self-empowerment clinic aimed at expanding legal services for marginalized children and families seeking to end police violence in Louisiana. I'm incredibly grateful to be in this room, thanks to all the support of all you in this room, current and past fellows, advocates, and those of you who have dedicated so much to help those in desperate need of equal treatment under the law. Thank you for supporting my work at the ACLU of Louisiana and bringing attention to the many injustices occurring there and across the South. Thank you for supporting Equal Justice Works and our next Text to Give fellow. Thank you.